Hello students, welcome to our YouTube channel. For today's video, we are going to discuss about the basic probability. So, in this topic, we are going to discuss about the first one is the random experiments. So, what is a random experiment? Experiments in science and engineering are crucial for understanding phenomena. Controlled experiments under nearly identical conditions yield consistent results by allowing control over influencing variables. So, in engineering or sciences, they use or reuse the controlled experiment so that we have the identical outcomes. So if we use one chemical and mix to another chemical, it will yield to the same and identical results. However, in some cases, certain variables remain uncontrollable, leading to varied outcomes despite similar conditions. So it is what defines the random experiments. Even we are not using if we are using the same methods or techniques, we are we are going to yield different outcomes. So what are the other examples of rather random experiments? The first one, if we toss a coin, okay, if we toss a coin, we are going to have a heads or tails. We toss a coin. If we toss a coin, I maybe have the different outcomes. For me, I may yield a tails as an outcome, and you may yield a head as an outcome. We just toss a coin. We use the same method. Okay, we flip the coin into the air, and we have a different result. Okay, so in this case, random experiments means having a varied outcomes. Okay, and it says that we have, and sometimes in the book, it is used as the tails symbolized by T or 0, and as well as the heads symbolized by H or 1. Another example for the random experiments is if we toss a die, the results will be different. Okay? If we toss a die, sometimes it is true, three, four, five, one, two, or six. Okay? It is that we have the same die, same weight, and the same environment. We just toss a die, and it sometimes lead to different outcomes. Okay? Does the random experiments becomes clear? Okay, let's have another example. If you toss a coin twice, there are four results. The first results, the results will be the heads comes first, followed by another heads, or the head comes first, followed by the tail, or the tails come first, followed by the heads, or both toss of our coins will have an outcome of both tails. So these are there are four possible outcomes if we toss a coin twice. Okay? Do you understand that? Okay, very good. Another example, if you are making polls with machine, the result of the experiment is that some may be effective and some are not. So visible, let's imagine we have this box which there is a similar balls in there. So now we are going to pick one. Okay, we are picking one, and it is a defective. We pick another one, non-defective. Okay, in this box is our sample space. The number of balls is a possible or the possible ways of picking the balls that may be defective or not. Okay? Does the random experiment's definition has become more clear? Okay, let's have another one. If an experiment consists of measuring lifetimes of electric light bulbs, okay, imagine we are going to the store. We have to buy a new light for our house, for our room. Now, to light our room, we have to find the bulbs that is that have a long lifespan. Okay. Now we cannot know which bulb is the longest one. Okay. Here in this example, let's say the bulbs only have 4,000 hours. Okay, it will last only for 4,000, not more than 4,000. Okay, from 0 to 4,000 hours. We have the chances of picking the light bulbs that may have a 3,000 hours, 2,000 hours, 100 hours, or 500 hours. So that are the possible outcomes of picking a light bulb. It may last. The light bulb you may choose is that will last only for 600 hours, and I may pick if I was going to buy a light bulb, I may pick randomly a only 1 hour light bulb. Okay, that is a random experiment. We always use random experiments in our daily lives on picking eggs that may be not nice or eggs that have a the fresh egg and not fresh eggs. Okay, we everything is almost about the probability of picking something about for our daily day basis. Another one for to have a deeper understanding about the basic probability is to understand about the sample space. So what is sample space? A set S representing all possible outcomes of a random experiment is a sample space. If we toss a coin, so what are the outcomes? Heads or tails. So that is the sample space. Each outcome is a sample space. If we say, if we toss a coin, says it is heads, so heads is a sample space, and tails is also, no, sample point, head is a sample point, and also the tail is a sample point. If we toss a coin, there are two sample points in one sample space. Multiple sample spaces can describe outcomes, but usually only one provides the most information. So for us to understand better what is this sample space, let's have an example. If we toss a die, one sample space or a set of all possible outcomes is given by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, while another is odd or even. That's right. The possible outcomes of die is either odd or even. It is clear, however, that the latter would not be adequate to determine, for example, whether an outcome is divided by 3. We can tell if if we are going to use the odd or even outcome if we say, okay, I toss a die and the possible outcome is probably odd or even. So when we say that odd or even, we can tell if that outcome is divisible by 3, right? Because if we say it is odd or even, if the result is odd, this particular odd is divisible by 3. Okay, there are only one outcome that is divisible by 3, that is the number 3, and the odd result would be 1 and 5. So we can tell if which one has been the result or the outcome. It is the odd is not adequate enough to define what is the real outcome when we toss a die. Do you get that? I hope you get that. Another example of sample space, if you toss a coin twice and use 0 to represent tail and 1 to represent heads, the sample space can be portrayed by the point in a figure 1-1 where, for example, 0, 1 represent tails on the first toss and heads on the second toss. Okay, if we toss a coin twice, there there is one sample space. Okay, one sample space, and there is four sample points. Okay, what are the sample points? 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, and 1, 0. Do you understand that? Okay, again, the if we toss a coin, if we toss a coin twice, there is one sample space composed of four sample points, which are 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, and 1, 1. Now we understand the sample space. Let's have the event. So what is event? An event denoted by A is a set of possible outcomes from a sample space. So we have to say that the event is a subset of sample space. If the actual outcome of an experiment belongs to set A, we say that event A has occurred. A single point event in S is often called a simple or elementary event. So now, to further understand this topic, let's have an example. If we toss a coin twice, the event that only one head comes up in the subset of the space, okay? Event that only one head comes up, let's highlight this. Only one head comes up, okay? Only one. It means does not have another head, or it doesn't matter if had uh tails. Okay, so when you say only one head comes up, it's either the pair, or if we toss a coin, it's either we toss a coin in the first toss, it is a head, and it should be the next toss would be a tail. Or if we toss a coin, it comes with tails first, and the next um, outcome must be a head. So here in this figure 1-2, we can see here that only one on the shaded region, only one have a head. Okay, only one. Okay, it is not belong because it has two, and in our condition, only one head comes up. So it is called events. Okay, the events is a subset of a sample space. Subset of a sample space, and an event may have one or more sample points. Next, in probability theory, events are subset of a sample space as the fundamental events are the sure event as itself, certain to occur, and the impossible event implied by empty set impossible to occur. Set operations and events include union A, union B, or it is read by as either A or B or both. Intersection A intersection B, or read as B, both A and B. Complement A prime, or read as not A. And we have the difference. A minus B is equal to A intersection B prime, A but not B. A prime is equal to sample space minus the set of A. Events can be mutually exclusive if their corresponding events are disjoint, meaning they cannot both occur. Collection of events, A sub 1, A sub 2, A sub n, is mutually exclusive if every pair in the collection is mutually exclusive. So whenever we say, I hope that you have the knowledge about mutually exclusive. When we say it mutually exclusive, that, for example, we toss a coin and only one will be the result. There is no result that have a heads and tails on the first toss. Okay, that is an impossible. We have an impossible outcome that both heads and tails has been the result of tossing a coin. So that is not a mutually exclusive event. Okay, another example of events referring to the experiment of tossing a coin twice. Let A be the event at least one head occurs. Whenever what we understand when we say at least one head occurs on the set A, okay, it means that it may have one or more heads that has been the sample point or the outcome. And the set B is the second toss will is entail. So on event A, we have the at least one head occurs, and this sample event, the in the sample space, we have an event A of HT, GH, and HH that says that at least one head occurs, and the event B that on there is, and the second toss will be in tail. So the event B have HT and ET because the second toss that is the outcome. It has the outcome of tails on the second toss. So if we are going to use the um, operations, if I'm going to use the operations uh, of the events, we have A union B. If we are going to unite the elements of event A and event B, we will have the HT, TH, HT, TH, and HH will be combined to HT and TT. Double T, so we have HT, TH, HH, and double T. Okay, we have already HT on the first element of A union B, and this HT, TH, and HH, and double T is equivalent to the sample space. Okay, the sample space of tossing a coin twice will have samples four samples point, and its sample space has HT, TH, HH, and double T. The next one, A intersection B. Whenever if you remember the intersection, it is finding the similarity on two sets. So what is the similar elements between set A and set B? Okay, the HT. And let's have A prime. Let's say in the A prime, it means that what is not in the sample on the set event A. Okay, the event A prime, it is the complement of sample space. So we have in the sample space we have HT, TH, HH, and double T. So we have the A prime. What is not in the event A? So only event T. Okay, only this event is not visible, we can see that element in the set A or event A, okay? HT is in event A, TH is in event A, HH is in event A, and only double T is not included in the event A. So, what is not included in event A is included in the A prime or complement of A, and that is the double T. Okay, do you understand that? Okay, what is we use the complement A or complement event when a particular element or particular sample point is not available, is not or not included on in event A. So only event or only the sample point double T is not included. So it will be that the A prime complement A is double T. And another one is the difference. A minus B is equal to TH and double H. TH, okay, TH and double H are the included because HT has been cancelled. And remember that A minus B is not equal to B minus A. Why? Why A minus B is not equal to B minus A? Okay, remember that B minus A will result to canceling the HT on B. We are going to minus what is the sample point included in the event B. So the similarity on A and B is HT, and HT will be eliminated for B minus A. So that is why B minus A is equal to the set of two tails when we toss a coin. Is that clear? Okay, let's move. Now we have the probability, and under the probability are the concept of the probability, axioms of the probability, theorems of probability, and assignment of probabilities. The first one, let's have the concept of probability. In a random experiment, the uncertainty of an event's occurrence can be measured by assigning the probability between 0 and 1. Okay? The probability of 1, it is the certainty to occur, and 0, it is the impossible or non-occurrence of the outcomes, or there is no, it is an empty set or impossible outcomes. For instance, a probability of 0.25, if we have 0.25 chance of winning, it is means that we have the 75% of losing. Okay, if we are going to the competition and there are four of you who are in the competition, and you tell that you have a 25% of winning, and that means that you have the 75% of losing. This can also be expressed as odds against occurrence such as 3 to 1, indicating a 75% chance against and 25% chance for the event. So like what I said, you have the 75% of losing or 25% of winning. The procedure of estimating probability. So there are two uh, procedures. The first one is the classical approach. It is has been used for many years and for many applications, the classical approach. If an event can occur in each different ways out of a total number of n possible ways which are equally likely, then the probability of the event is h over n. So the classical approach, for example, if we toss a coin, if a, a single toss of a fair coin, there are two equally likely outcomes, head or tails. Since only one of these outcome is a head, the probability of getting a head is calculated as the number of favorable outcomes of getting a head divided by total number of possible outcomes. In this case, it is 1, the favorable outcomes for a head divided by 2 total possible outcomes of head or tails. Therefore, the probability of getting a head in a single toss of a fair coin is 1/2. It is what is always taught and asked. This is the classical approach, what we have been taught in schools and in many books. The another one is the frequency approach. In the frequency approach, we are going to count the number of outcomes divided by the number of um, trials. For example, if after n repetition of an experiment where n is very large, an event is observed to occur each of these, then the probability of the event is h over n. This is also called the empirical probability of the event. For example, if you toss a coin 1,000 times, then find that comes up heads 532 times, we estimate the probability of head coming up to be 532 divided by 1,000 is equal to 0.532. Okay, in the frequency approach, we are going to try in a very large number before we count a numbers of favorable outcomes. For example, if we toss a coin and the favorable outcome is head, we want to count the number of heads has been the result. So the if we have 532 heads and there is a 468 tails, and therefore, we have 532 heads divided by 1,000 possible outcomes. It is equal to 0.532. Okay. Now we understand the two procedures of estimating probability. Let's move on. So both the classical and frequency approaches have serious drawbacks. The first because the words equally likely for the classical approach, and the frequency approach have a large number involved is vague. Because of this difficulty, mathematicians have led to an axiomic approach to probability. So what is an axiomic approach? This we have in the actions of probability, we have to understand the discrete sample space S. In the discrete sample space, all subsets of S correspond to event. This means that every possible outcome in discrete sample space can be considered as an event. Okay, remember that. And non-discrete sample space, in a non-discrete sample space, only special subset, measurable subset, corresponds to events. Not all possible subsets are considered an event in this case. So for us to determine the difference between discrete and non-discrete, the discrete is countable. Discrete sample space, again, is countable. The results are countable, and non-discrete sample space is non-countable. It is continuous. Okay. So the first one is discrete and continuous. Okay, we can search that online. What is the difference of discrete and continuous? When we say continuous, it is non-countable or uncountable. And the third one, to understand the axioms of probability, we have the probability function P. For each event A in the class C of event, a real number probability of A is associated as probability of event A. Okay, now we understand the discrete, non-discrete, and the probability function. Let's have an axiom one. For every event A in the class C, we have to denote probability of A is greater than or equal to zero. Okay, there is no negative probability. Okay, we never say probability of event A is should be greater than or equal to zero. Axiom 2, for sure S or certain event S in the class C, or the probability of a sample space is equal to 1. It is the certain occurrence. Whenever we say certain occurrence, when there is, for example, there is only one applicant and then interview, and the employer wants to hire a particular person in the job. So only one person, and they want to hire a person. So it is also an example of um, certainty of occurrence, because there is only one applicant, and whoever applied in that position have a certainty. For example, what is the probability of getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in tossing a die? So there is a certain or certainty of occurrence that either one or two or three or four or five or six will be the outcome when we when we roll a die. Axiom 3, for any number of mutually exclusive event A sub 1, A sub 2 to the infinity in the class C, we have this probability of A union A sub 2 union to the infinity is equal to the probability of A sub 1 plus probability of A sub 2 plus to the infinity. In particular, for two mutually exclusive events, A sub 1, A sub 2, we have the probability of A sub 1 union A sub 2 is equal to the probability of A sub 1 plus probability of A sub 2. So later on, we will discuss that with the use of the examples. Some important theorems on probability. Theorem 1-1, if A sub 1 and A sub 2 are events such that P, probability of A sub 1 is less than or equal to the probability of A sub 2, then the probability of event A sub 2 minus event A sub 1 is equal to the probability of A sub 2 minus probability of A sub 1. Theorem 1-2, for every event A, probability of event A is greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to 1. And theorem 1-3, that the probability of empty set is 0. Theorem 1-4, if A prime is the complement of A, then the probability of A prime is equal to D1 minus probability of A. Theorem 1-5, if A is equal to A sub 1 union A sub 2 union to the A sub n, where A sub 1, A sub 2, A sub n are mutually exclusive events, then probability of A is equal to probability A sub 1 plus probability of A sub 2 to the probability of A sub n. In particular, if A is equal to S, or the sample space, then probability of A sub 1 plus probability of A sub 2 to the probability of A sub n is equal to 1, because it is a sample space. Theorem 1-6, if A and B are two events, then probability of A union B is equal to the probability of A plus B minus probability of A intersection B. Or generally, if A sub 1 A sub 2, A sub 3 are any three events, then probability of A sub 1 union A sub 2 union A sub 3 is equal to the probability of A sub 1 plus probability of A sub 2 plus probability of A sub 3 minus probability of A sub 1 intersection A sub 2 minus probability of A sub 2 intersection A sub 3 minus probability of A sub 1 intersection A sub 3 plus probability of A sub 1 union intersection A sub 3 intersection A sub 2. Generalization to an event can also be made. Theorem 1-7 for any events A and B, probability A is equal to the probability of intersection B plus probability of intersection B prime. If an event A must result in occurrence of one of the mutually exclusive events, A sub 1, A sub 2 to the A sub n, then probability of A is equal to the probability of A intersection A sub 1 plus probability of A intersection A sub 2 plus to the probability of A intersection A sub n. If a sample space consists of a finite number of outcomes A sub 1, A sub 2 to the A sub n, then by theorem 1.1-5, probability of A sub 1 plus probability of A sub 2 plus to the probability of A sub n is equal to 1 for the certainty, where A sub 1, A sub 2, A sub n are elementary events given by A sub I is equal to set of A sub I. It follows that we can arbitrarily choose any non-negative numbers for the probabilities of these simple events as long as probability of A sub 1 plus probability of A sub 2 plus to the probability of A sub n is equal to 1 is satisfied. In particular, if we assume equal probabilities for all simple events, then probability of A sub k is equal to 1 over n, k is equal to 1, 2 to the n. To understand this, and if A is any event we made up of each simple events, we have probability of A is equal to H sub n. This H sub n is equal or equivalent to the classical approach. Example 1.12, a single die is tossed once. Find the probability of 2 or 5 turning up. The sample space is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If we assign equal probabilities to the sample space, given that if we assume the die is fair, then probability of 1 is equal to the probability of 2. It's also equal to the probability of 6 is equal to 1 over 6. Okay, if we are going to find what is the probability of getting 1 or probability of 1, we have 1 over 6, or probability of getting 2, when we toss a die, we have also 1 over 6. So it is equal. The event that either 2 or 5 turns up is indicated by probability of 2 union 5. Therefore, probability of 2 union 5 is equal to the probability of 2 plus probability of 5 is equal to 1 over 6 plus 1 over 6 is equal to 1/3. So that is our example. The next one is the conditional probability. The concept of conditional probability, theorems of conditional probability, independent event, and Bayes theorem. Let A and B be events with probability of A is greater than 0. Denote that probability of B such that A occurs as the probability of given of B given that A has occurred. When A occurs, it becomes the new definition or new sample space replacing the original S. This leads to new definition. Let's have probability of B given that A has occurred is equivalent to the probability of A intersection B all over probability of A, or probability of A intersection B is equivalent to the probability of A multiplied to the probability of B, such that B given that A has occurred. So in this figure, we can say that A intersection B is in that intersection of the Venn diagram on the set A, and event B, and all of in the rectangular is the sample space. Another example is find the probability that the single toss of a die will result in a number less than 4. If no other information is given, in B, it is given that the toss resulted in an odd number. So to answer this, let B denote the event less than 4. Since B is the union of the event 1, 2, 3, or 3 turning up, we see by theorem 1-5 that probability of getting 1, or probability of event A, or the event A is no other information is given. Let's say that there is the probability of getting 1, 2, or 3. So we have the event probability of event A is the probability of event 1 plus probability of event 2 plus probability of event 3 is equal to 1 over 6 plus 1 over 6 plus 1 over 6 is equal to 1 half. Therefore, the probability of getting 1, 2, or 3 is 1 half. Okay? Assuming equal probabilities for the sample points. So this is the classical approach. So equally likely to happen. So that is why they are using assuming equal probabilities of getting 1, 2, or 3. Next is additional if on the letter on B, it is given that the toss resulted in an odd number. Letting A be the event, odd number, we see that the probability of A is 3 over 6 or equal to 1 half. Also, probability of A intersection B is 2 over 6 is equal to 1/3. Then, we have the probability of B given that A has occurred is equal to the probability of A intersection B divided by probability of A. We know that the probability of A intersection B is 1/3 and divided by the probability of A, which is the result of 3 over 6 or 1 half. So 1/3 divided by 1 half is equal to 2/3. Hence, the added knowledge that thus result in an odd number raises the probability from 1 half to 2/3. Okay, if we are going to understand this in a basic form, we are looking for the probability of getting 1, 2, and 3. This is for event A. And given on the event B, we have given the toss is an odd number, what is 1, 3, and 5. Since our 1 and 3 is similar, we are going to have is equal to A union B, we have A and B plus B. We have 1, 2, 3, and 5. So we have 4 over 6. So if we can have, say we have 4 over 6. Since 1, 2, 3, and there are only 6 possible outcomes, you have 4 over 6, and it is now equal to 2 over 3. Do you get that? Okay, I hope you understand that particular uses of um, theorem 1-5. Theorems and conditional another example, another theorem for the theorems and conditional probability is theorem 1-9. For any three events, a sub 1, a sub 2, a sub 3, we have probability of a sub 1 union intersection rather a sub 2 intersection a sub 3 is equal to the probability of a sub 1 multiplied to the a probability of a sub 2 given that a sub 1 has occurred multiplied to the probability of a sub 3 given that a intersection a sub 2 has occurred. Theorem 1-10, if an event A must result in one of the mutually exclusive events A sub 1, A sub 2 to the A sub n, then probability of A is equal to the probability of A sub 1 multiplied to the probability of A given that A sub 1 has occurred plus probability of A sub 2 multiplied to the probability of A given that A sub 2 has occurred plus to the probability of n multiplied to the probability of A given that A sub n has occurred. Now, next is to understand the independent events. If the probability of B given that A has occurred is equal to the probability of B, given that the probability of B occurring is not affected by the occurrence or non-occurrence of A, then we say A and B are independent events. This is equivalent to probability of A intersection B is equal to probability of A multiplied to the probability of B. Let's understand that the probability of A is not affect will not affect the probability of B. We say that the three events A sub 1, A sub 2, A sub 3 are independent if they are pairwise independent. Here is the example. Probability of A sub j intersection A sub k is equal to the probability of A sub j multiplied to the probability of A sub k such that j is not equal to k and the elements of j k is equal to 1, 2, 4, and 3. And the probability of A sub 1 intersection A sub 2 intersection A sub 3 is equal to probability of A sub 1 multiplied to probability of A sub 2 probability of A sub 3. So let's try this. Okay, I hope you understand that independent events. Remember that in the independent event, the probability of occurring of event of the first event does not affect the occurrence of uh event of another the second event. Okay. So let's have another conditional. You wake up one morning feeling a little bit sick with no particular symptoms, just not 100% sure. So you go to the doctor and he doesn't know what is going on with you. So he suggests running a battery of tests. It turns out you tested positive for every rare disease that affects about 1.1% of the population. So you ask the doctor how certain it is that you have this disease. Then you say the test will correctly identify 99% of people who have the disease and only incorrectly identify 1% of people who doesn't have the disease. What are the actual chances that you have this disease? So to answer that question, let's use the Bayes theorem. Suppose that A sub 1, A sub 2 to the A sub n are mutually exclusive events whose union is sample space S, given that one of the events must occur. Then if A is any event, we have the following important theorem. Theorem 1-11, the Bayes rule. It is the uh, formula for Bayes theorem. Probability of A sub k given that A has occurred is equal to the probability of A sub k multiplied to the probability of A given that A sub k has occurred all over the J summation of P probability of A sub j multiplied to the probability of A given that A sub j has occurred with the lower limit of 1 to the upper limit of n. So using the Bayes theorem, okay, this is the part where is on this side that try this, you are wake up in the morning feeling you are sick. To answer that, we are going to use the Bayes theorem. So let H is have the disease and E you tested positive. So to use the Bayes theorem, we have to indicate, let's say the H have the disease and E you tested positive. That is the probability of probability of having the disease given that you tested positive is equal to the probability of being tested positive given that you have disease multiplied to the probability of having disease all over to the probability of being tested positive. So now let's find first the probability of being tested positive. So it is probability of H or probability of having the disease multiplied to the probability of being tested positive such given that you have the disease plus probability of not having the disease multiplied to the probability of being tested positive given that you do not have the disease. So now we have the probability of having the disease given that you are tested positive is equal to the probability of being tested positive given that you have the disease multiplied to the probability of having the disease all over to the probability of having disease multiplied to the probability of being tested positive given that you have the disease plus the probability of not having the disease multiplied to the probability of being tested positive given that you do not have the disease. So now the probability of PEH, okay, probability of being tested positive given that you have disease is 99%. So we have 0.99. And probability of having disease, it says that 0.1%. So we have 0.0001. So that is the probability of having disease is 0.1%. And so now we have the probability of having disease multiplied to the probability of having disease being tested positive given that you have disease and probability of not having disease. So it is 0.1% and 100% minus 0.1% is equal to 99.9% of not having disease multiplied to the probability of being tested positive given that you do not have the disease. It is the incorrectly identified. Okay? You are tested positive, but you don't have the disease. So we have 1% or 0.1. So that is the probability of being tested positive given that you do not have the disease. And uh, as we use the calculator and computed these values, we have this probability of having disease given that you have tested positive is equal to 0.09016 or equal to 9%. So the correctness of this measurement that you may have the probability of having the disease right after that you are tested positive is only 9%. Now let's move to the next topic about the combinatorics. Under the combinatorics is combinatorics analysis, fundamental principle of counting, permutation, and combinations. Combinatorial analysis. Suppose that A sub 1, A sub 2 to the A sub n are mutually exclusive events whose union is the sample space S, given that one of the event must occur. Then, if A is any event, we have the following important theorem. The base rule of the theorem 1-11, like what we have used before. And in scenarios where the sample space has a manageable number of sample points, direct counting for a probability determination is feasible. However, when direct counting is impractical due to a large number of sample points, combinatorial analysis, a more sophisticated counting method, is employed. So sometimes there are combinatorial analysis that needs are a large number, so it is impractical. So we are going to use another approach. So this is one of the fundamental principles of counting, which is the use of tree diagram. Example, if a man has two shirts and four ties, then he has 2 times 4 is equal to 8 ways of choosing a shirt and then a tie. Example, letting represented by S or shirt 1 and shirt 2 and the ties B of ties number 1, tie number 2, tie number 3, tie number 4. The various way of choosing the shirt, then a tie are indicated in the tree diagram figure 1-4. So the shirt number 1 can be paired with the tie number 1, tie number 2, tie number 3, tie number 4, and the shirt number 2 can be paired with the tie number 1, tie number 2, tie number 3, tie number 4. So there are 8 possible ways of choosing a shirt and then a tie. Next is the permutation. So suppose that we are given n distinct objects and wish to arrange R of this object in line, since there are n ways of choosing the first object, and then after this is done, n minus 1 ways of choosing the second object, and finally n minus r plus 1 ways of choosing the rth object. It follows by the fundamental principle of counting that the number of different arrangement or permutation, as they are often called, is given by P NPR is equal to N multiplied to N minus 1, N minus multiplied to N times N minus 2 times to N minus R plus 1. Where it is noted that the product has R factors, we call NPR the number of permutation of N objects taken R at a time. In the particular case where R is equal to N becomes N objects taken are at a time is equal to n minus n times n minus 1 times n minus 2 times 1 is equal to n factorial. We can write n objects taken are at a time is equal to n factorial divided by n minus r factorial. If r is equal n, we see that B and C agree only if we have 0 factorial is equal to 1, then we shall actually take this as definition of 0 factorial. So now let's have an example to understand permutation. The number of different arrangement of permutation consisting of three letters, each that can be formed from 7 letters, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, is probability of 7 objects taking 3 at a time is equal to 7 factorial divided by 4 factorial is equal to 7, 6, and times 7 times 6 times 5 is equal to 210. Now, let's have, for the fundamental principle, this is a permutation. Whenever we use a fundamental principle of counting, we can use like this way. Okay, this is the first choice, the second choice, and first arrangement, second arrangement, and third arrangement. It is a multiplication. Okay, multiplication. So on the first letter, we have going to pick from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have on the first choice of the arrangement, there are 7 possible ways. Okay, there are 7. So on the second arrangement, we already taken 1 for the first arrangement. So 7 minus 1 is 6. And 6 minus 1 is equal to 5. And then we have to multiply this to have 210. Okay? Okay, that is the permutation using the fundamental principle of counting. Suppose that the set consists of n objects of which n sub 1 are one of the type, given that indistinguishable from each other, n sub 2 are of a second type, n sub k are of the kth type, of course, n is equal to n sub 1 plus n sub 2 plus n to the n sub k, then the number of different permutations of the object is n objects taken n sub 1, n sub 2 to the n sub k at a time is equal to n sub n permutation divided by n sub 1 permutation, factorial. N factorial divided by n sub 1 factorial, n sub 2 factorial to the n sub k factorial. Another example, the number of different permutation of 11 letters of the word Mississippi, which consists of 1M, 4I, 4S, 2Ps, is 11 factorial divided by 1 factorial times 4 factorial times 4 factorial times 2 factorial, 3, 4, 6, 50. Why this is a need to divide it into 1 factorial, 4 factorial, 2 factorial? Because remember that in the word Mississippi, there is repeating numbers of S. There are 4S, 2Ps, and 4Is. It doesn't matter if it interchange the first S to the second S. It doesn't change the spelling of our letter. It is the same S that we interchange. In a permutation, we are interested in order of arrangement of the object. For example, ABC is a different permutation from BCA in many problems. However, we are interested only in selecting or choosing objects without regard to order. In a permutation, remember that there is an arrangement in permutation, while in combination, there are not. In permutation, ABC is different from CBA. But in combinations, ABC is equal to CBA or is equal to BCA. Such selections are called combinations. For example, ABC and BCA are the same combination, as I said before. The total number of combinations of our object selected from n, also called the combination of n things taken r at a time, is denoted by NCR on or n sub or nr. nr is equal to NCR is equal to n factorial divided by r factorial times n minus r factorial. It can also be written of nr is equal to n times n minus 1 to n minus r plus 1 divided by r factorial is equal to n permutation of n objects taken r at a time divided by r factorial. It's easy to show that nr is equal to n of n minus r or n combination of n objects taken r at a time is equal to n combination of n objects taken n minus r at a time. So the example, let's have example. The number of ways in which three cards can be chosen selected from a total of 8 different cards is 8 objects taken 3 at a time is equal to a 8 sub r 8 sub 3 is equal to 8 times 7 times 6 divided by 3 factorial. So in choosing three cards, it does not have the arrangement. So it is the perfect use of combination. Another one is we have let's have another trivia. The numbers of n combination of n objects taken r at a time or nr are often called binomial coefficients because they arise in the binomial expansion. So as we see here, x plus y raised to n, we have x sub n, x raised to n plus n, the n of f1 is equal times x raised to n minus 1 y plus n of 2 multiply to x raised to n minus 2 y raised to 2 plus to the n of n times y raised to n. So example, we have x plus y raised to 4 is equal to x raised to 4 and 4 of 1 x cubed y plus 4 of 2 x squared y squared plus 4 sub of 3 x y cubed plus 4 of 4 y cubed. So that is how we apply the how was the binomial coefficient was used in the combinatorics. So if you are going to simplify the four we have the binomial coefficient or binomial expansion of x plus y raised to 4 is equal to x raised to 4 plus x raised 4x cubed y plus 6x squared y squared plus 4x y cubed plus y raised to 4. And lastly, the Stirling's approximation to n factorial. When n is large, a direct evaluation of n factorial may be impractical. In such cases, use can be of approximate formula or n factorial is approximate value of square root of 2 pi n multiplied to n raised to n is equal multiplied to Euler's raised to negative n, where E or Euler's is equal to 2.71828 and so on, which is the base of natural logarithms. The symbol wave means the ratio of the left side to the right side approaches 1 as n approaches on infinity. Computing technology has largely eclipsed the value of Stirling's formula for numerical computation, but approximation remains valuable for theoretical estimates. So this Stirling's approximation using the factorial to estimate or approximate the the numbers that are very large or in infinite numbers. So even though in the present age computing technology has been used, it is also as well as a valuable information or knowledge in um, theoretical estimates. So I hope you learned for today. Thank you for having me in this video. So I am grateful for participating in this video. Let's see each other so on, and good day and God bless. Bye bye.